I've been on this earth for 70 years. Fought in a war. Built a construction business from nothing. Buried a wife I loved more than breathing. Raised a son who I thought understood what it meant to be a man of honor. On my 70th birthday, I learned I was wrong about that last part. The dinner was supposed to be simple. My son Derek, his wife Vanessa, their 2 kids, and a handful of old friends at Romano's the Italian place on 5th Street, where I'd been eating since it opened in 1982. Nothing fancy. I didn't want a fuss. At 70, you stop caring about candles and cake. You just want the people you love around you, treating each other with basic human decency. Vanessa arrived 15 minutes late, as usual. She swept in wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension, her highlighted hair perfect, her smile plastic. Sorry, she announced to the table, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic was insane. You know how it is. She didn't kiss me hello. Didn't even look at me directly. Just tossed her designer purse onto the empty chair and immediately started checking her phone. Derek stood up to pull out her chair. My son, 6'2", broad-shouldered, wearing a suit I'd helped him buy for his first real job interview 15 years ago. He worked in pharmaceutical sales now, made good money, owned a nice house in Upper Arlington. He kissed Vanessa's cheek and sat back down, glancing at me with something like apology in his eyes. But he didn't say anything. He never did. Grandpa, I made you a card at school. My granddaughter Emma, 8 years old, pushed a folded piece of construction paper across the table. Her smile was gap-toothed and genuine. On the front, she'd drawn a stick figure of me with gray hair and a cane. Inside, "Happy birthday, Grandpa. You are the best. Love, Emma." "This is beautiful, sweetheart," I said, my voice catching. "I'm going to put this on my refrigerator the minute I get home." "Oh, for God's sake, Emma, not at dinner." Vanessa didn't look up from her phone. "Robert doesn't need more clutter in that apartment." The table went quiet. My friend Bill, who'd served with me in Vietnam, shifted in his seat. His wife Linda studied her wine glass. Derek cleared his throat, but said nothing. "It's not clutter," I said evenly. "It's a gift from my granddaughter." Vanessa finally looked at me. Her eyes were cold, assessing. "Right. Well, at your age, maybe it's time to downsize anyway. That assisted living facility on Henderson Road has some nice units. I saw a brochure at the gym." I felt my jaw tighten. "I'm not interested in assisted living, Vanessa. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Are you?" She tilted her head, that fake concern dripping from her voice. "Because Derek mentioned you forgot to pay your water bill last month. And you fell in the shower last year. I slipped on soap. Once. That doesn't mean." "Dad's fine," Derek interrupted, but his voice was weak, apologetic. "Let's just order, okay?" It's his birthday. The waiter came. We ordered. The tension at the table felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Emma and her younger brother Tyler played with their phones, oblivious. Bill and Linda made small talk about the weather, the Buckeyes' chances this season. Anything to fill the silence. Then the food arrived, and Vanessa truly showed her colors. "So, Robert," she said, cutting into her chicken piccata with surgical precision, "Derek and I have been talking about your situation." "My situation," I repeated. "Your financial situation." She smiled, and it didn't reach her eyes. "We know you're living on Social Security, and that tiny pension from the company. And at your age, with your health issues. I don't have health issues. It just makes sense to be realistic. You can't keep pretending you're still some big-shot contractor. That was decades ago. Now you're just, well, you're old. And old people need help. The words landed like a slap. Around the table, everyone froze. Bill's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Linda actually gasped. Derek stared at his plate, his face red. Vanessa, he started. What? I'm being practical, Derek. Someone has to be. She turned back to me, her voice dripping with condescension. We've been supporting you, Robert. The birthday dinners, the Christmas presents, the money Derek gives you. He doesn't give me money, I said quietly. Oh, please. The loans that never get paid back? The help with bills? She made air quotes with her perfectly manicured fingers. Let's be honest. You're a financial burden. And it's getting embarrassing. My friends ask me about Derek's father, and I have to explain that you're living in some shabby apartment. Barely scraping by. That's enough. My voice came out harder than I intended. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Excuse me? I said that's enough. This is my birthday dinner, and you're a guest. You will show respect, or you will leave. She laughed. Actually laughed a sharp, ugly sound. Respect? For what? You think because you used to run some little construction company 40 years ago, that means something today. You're nobody, Robert. Just another old man who peaked decades ago and can't accept that the world moved on without him. Derek finally spoke up. Vanessa, come on. That's too far. But his voice was weak. And when she shot him a look, he went quiet again. My son, my only child, sat there while his wife eviscerated me in front of my friends and grandchildren. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Vanessa continued. You're 70 years old, living alone in a dumpy apartment, with no real income and no purpose. Maybe it's time to accept reality and stop pretending you're still relevant. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma looked like she might cry. Tyler was staring at his video game. Bill and Linda were both staring at Derek, waiting for him to do something, say something, be a man and defend his father. He didn't. I stood up slowly, carefully folding my napkin and placing it on the table. My hands were steady, even though rage was burning through my chest like wildfire. Thank you all for coming, I said quietly. I think I'd like to finish my birthday alone. Oh, don't be dramatic, Vanessa started. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. Good night. I walked out of Romano's with my head held high, leaving my uneaten dinner and my so-called family behind. Bill caught up with me in the parking lot, putting a hand on my shoulder. Rob, I'm sorry. That was out of line. It's fine, Bill. It's not fine. What she said. I said it's fine. I met his eyes. Sometimes people need to learn lessons the hard way. And Vanessa just enrolled herself in a very expensive course. He looked confused, but I didn't explain. I got in my trucka, 2015 Ford I'd bought with cash, and drove back to my dumpy apartment. The modest 2-bedroom unit I'd been renting for the past 8 years. Ever since I sold the family house after my wife passed. When I got home, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table. I taped Emma's card to the refrigerator, just like I'd promised. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. hadn't looked at in years. Inside were documents, deeds, contracts, legal papers representing 50 years of careful planning and quiet investment. Vanessa had made a critical mistake tonight. She'd assumed that because I lived simply, I had nothing. She'd assumed that because I didn't flaunt wealth, I didn't possess it. She'd assumed that a 70-year-old man in a modest apartment was powerless. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from hurt. I'd lived through worse than some spoiled woman's insults, but from the clarity that comes when someone finally shows you who they really are. At 3 a.m., I sat in my recliner with another cup of coffee and reviewed the documents spread across my coffee table. When my wife Margaret died 8 years ago, I made a decision. The big house in Clintonville, 4 bedrooms, beautiful yard, too many memories. I sold it. Bought this apartment? No, I bought the entire building. 12 units. But I lived in one as a tenant, paying rent to my own LLC. Kept things simple. Kept things quiet. The construction company I'd started in 1978, I sold that too. In 2005, when I turned 57. Got a good price, invested wisely. Commercial real estate mostly. A strip mall in Hilliard. 2 office buildings downtown. A small medical complex near Riverside Hospital. Nothing flashy. Just steady income properties with reliable tenants. And then there was the property in Upper Arlington. The one I'd bought in 1998 as an investment. Beautiful neighborhood, excellent schools, property values that only went up. I'd rented it out for years to nice families. Then 5 years ago, Derek asked if I'd sell it to him. Said he and Vanessa had found their dream home, but they were stretched thin. Could I help? Of course I helped. I'm his father. But I didn't give him a gift. I gave him an opportunity. I sold him the house at a fair price. Carried the mortgage myself at a generous interest rate. He made payments every month, directly to my LLC. On paper, to the outside world, Derek and Vanessa owned that house. But in reality, I held the note. Every single dollar of it. $380,000 remaining on a mortgage that didn't go through any bank. It went through me. At 7 a.m., I called my attorney, Paul Morrison. We'd known each other since 1982, when he was a young lawyer and I needed someone to set up my business. Now he was a senior partner at one of Columbus's most respected firms. "Rob, happy belated birthday," Paul said when he picked up. "How was dinner?" "Educational," I said. "Paul, I need you to review the mortgage documents on the Upper Arlington property. Derek's house." There was a pause. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I just want to understand my options." Another pause. Paul was smart enough to read between lines. "I'll pull the file this morning. Can you come by the office around 2? I'll be there." I spent the morning doing what I always did, reading the paper, taking a walk around Goodale Park, having lunch at the diner on 3rd Street, where the coffee was strong and nobody asked questions. At 2 o'clock sharp, I walked into Paul's office on Gay Street, 20th floor, with a view of the Scioto River. Paul was waiting with a thick file open on his desk. He was 63, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost what some people made in a month. But he'd grown up poor in Frank Linton, and he'd never forgotten it. "Robert, sit down." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "I've reviewed everything. The mortgage on the property at 847 Tremont Road is clear and enforceable. Derek has been making regular payments, never late, always the full amount. The outstanding balance is $378,416 as of this month. And if payments were to stop," Paul's eyebrows rose, "then you would have the right, after appropriate notice is specified in the contract, to foreclose." But Rob, Derek's never missed a payment. Why would, hypothetically, Paul? He studied me for a long moment. Hypothetically, if payments stopped, you would provide written notice of default. He'd have 30 days to cure. If he didn't, you could initiate foreclosure proceedings. Given that you hold the entire note, not a bank, the process would be ... straightforward. And if I wanted to call the loan due, there's no acceleration clause triggered by regular payments. But Paul flipped through the documents. There is a standard clause here about material changes in circumstances. If Derek were to, say, attempt to refinance without your consent, or if he defaulted on any other significant obligations, you could potentially trigger acceleration. But again, why would you want to? I told him about the dinner. Everything Vanessa had said. The way Derek had sat there silent. The humiliation in front of my friends and grandchildren. Paul's expression darkened. "Jesus, Rob, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just tell me what tools I have." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "You have considerable tools. The mortgage gives you significant leverage. But I have to ask, is this really the path you want to go down? This is your son's house. Your grandchildren live there. My son watched his wife call me a burden and said nothing. He let her mock me, insult me, dismiss 50 years of hard work. Maybe it's time Derek learned what supporting a family actually costs. All right." Paul closed the file. "Then here's what I suggest. We don't do anything precipitous. We watch. We wait. And if Vanessa continues down this path, if Derek continues to enable her, then we remind them of the reality of their situation. How? We send a letter. A polite, professional letter from this firm to Derek, reminding him of the terms of his mortgage agreement. Specifically, the clause that requires him to maintain the property adequately and to notify you of any significant financial changes. We make him aware that you, as the note holder, have certain rights and responsibilities. We don't threaten. We simply ... clarify. I considered this. And that would accomplish what? It would wake him up. Right now, Derek probably thinks of that mortgage like any other bill automatic payment. Don't think about it. But if he gets a letter from an attorney on firm letterhead reminding him that his father holds the note, that you could, if you chose, make things very difficult, that might inspire a conversation with his wife about respect and consequences. Do it, I said. Paul nodded and made a note. I'll draft something this week. Anything else? Yes, I want a full accounting of all my properties and assets. Everything in writing. I want to know exactly what I'm worth and who knows about it. Planning something? Planning to protect myself and maybe teach a lesson about assumptions. I left Paul's office feeling something I hadn't felt since the war, a sense of purpose sharpened by clarity. Vanessa had humiliated me because she thought I was powerless. Derek had allowed it because he thought there would be no consequences. They were both wrong. That evening, my phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Dad? Hey. His voice was strained, uncomfortable. Listen, about last night. Yes? Vanessa was... She was stressed. Work stuff. She didn't mean what she said. She meant every word, Derek. Dad, come on. She was just, where were you? I kept my voice level, calm. When she called me a burden. When she said I was nobody. When she mocked me in front of my friends and your children. Where were you? Silence. You sat there, I continued. You sat there and let your wife disrespect your father. Not because you disagreed with her, but because you were afraid to stand up to her. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You're a 42-year-old man, Derek. You have a good job. You have a family. But you don't have a spine. Jesus, Dad, I raised you better than this. Your mother and I taught you about honor, about loyalty, about standing up for what's right even when it's hard. Apparently none of that stuck. I'm sorry, okay? I should have said something. You're right. But Vanessa's been under a lot of pressure, and I don't want to hear about Vanessa's pressure. Everyone's under pressure, Derek. That doesn't give you license to be cruel. Another silence. Then, so what do you want from me? I want you to think about the choices you're making, about the kind of man you want to be, about whether your wife's comfort is more important than your father's dignity. This isn't about choosing. Everything's about choices, son. You made yours last night. Now you get to live with the consequences. I hung up before he could respond. 3 days later, Derek called again. This time his voice was different. Tight. Angry. Dad, what the hell is this? What's what? This letter. From Paul Morrison's office. About the mortgage. About reviewing our financial arrangements. What are you doing? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. I'm protecting my interests. Derek, the same thing any reasonable person would do when they realize their family doesn't respect them. Are you threatening us? Are you seriously threatening to take our house? I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply reminding you of the reality of your situation. You have a mortgage. I hold that mortgage. And as the note holder, I have certain rights. This is insane. Over a stupid argument at dinner? It wasn't an argument, Derek. It was your wife humiliating me while you watched. And yes, over that, I've decided to reassess our arrangement. Vanessa's going to lose her mind when she finds out. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you let her run her mouth. He hung up on me this time. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my recliner, feeling something like satisfaction settle into my bones. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the house. It was about respect, about consequences, about teaching 2 people who'd forgotten where they came from, exactly what they stood to lose. Vanessa showed up at my apartment, unannounced 2 days after Derek received Paul's letter. It was 8:30 in the morning, and I was reading the dispatch over coffee when someone started pounding on my door like they were trying to break it down. I opened it to find her standing there in workout clothes designer leggings, a fitted jacket, her hair in a high ponytail. Her face was flushed, her eyes furious. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into my living room. Good morning to you too, Vanessa. Please, come in. She spun to face me. What the hell are you trying to pull, Robert? I closed the door calmly and walked back to my kitchen table. picked up my coffee mug, took a sip. I'm not trying to pull anything. Would you like some coffee? I don't want coffee. I want to know why you sent your lawyer after us. That letter was completely inappropriate. The letter was a standard communication from a note holder to a borrower. Nothing inappropriate about it. Her hands clenched into fists. Derek said you're threatening to take our house. Derek exaggerates. I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply reminding you both of the terms of your mortgage agreement. This is because of what I said at dinner, isn't it? You're seriously that petty? I set down my mug and looked at her directly. Petty would be holding a grudge over a minor slight. What you did, Vanessa, wasn't minor. You publicly humiliated me, called me a burden, suggested I was senile and worthless. You did that in front of my friends and my grandchildren. Oh my God, get over it. I was having a bad day, and I'm having a bad month. Funny how that works. She stared at me, and I could see the wheels turning, the realization dawning. You're serious. You're actually going to use the mortgage against. Yes, I'm going to do what any reasonable person would do when they realize they've been financing the lifestyle of someone who has nothing but contempt for them. We pay you every month. You pay me interest on a loan I gave you at below market rates. That house is worth $560,000 right now. You still owe me $378,000. I could sell that note to a bank tomorrow, and they'd charge you twice the interest I'm charging. Or, I paused for effect, I could simply decide I'd like to liquidate my assets and call the loan due. Her face went pale. You can't do that. Actually, I can. It's in the contract. Material change in circumstances, which I'd argue includes the complete breakdown of family relationships. That's blackmail. No, Vanessa. Blackmail is illegal. This is just business. The same kind of cold, practical business you are advocating for at dinner when you suggested I should accept my irrelevance. She took a step toward me, her voice dropping. Listen to me, you vindictive old man. That house is ours. We've put $50,000 into renovations. We've made every single payment on time. You can't just take it because your feelings got hurt. I'm not taking anything yet, but I am reassessing our arrangement. And I'm asking myself whether I want to continue subsidizing the lifestyle of someone who thinks I'm a pathetic has-been. I never said. You said I was nobody. You said I was embarrassing. You suggested I should be in assisted living. You said those things, Vanessa, with witnesses present. So yes, I'm reconsidering whether I want to help someone who clearly doesn't value what I've given her. She was shaking now, with rage or fear or both. Derek will fight you on this. Derek can try, but the law is clear. I hold the note, and if I decide I want my money, I'll get my money. You're destroying your relationship with your son. No, I said quietly. Derek destroyed it when he sat silently while you tore me apart. I'm just deciding whether I'm going to keep pretending everything's fine. Vanessa pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Texting Derek, probably? Or her lawyer, if she was smart enough to have one. This isn't over, she said, her voice shaking. You're right. It's not. Here's what happens next, Vanessa. You and Derek have a choice to make. You can acknowledge what you did was wrong. You can apologize genuinely and treat me with the respect any human being deserves. Or you can continue on your current path, in which case I'll continue on mine. And your path involves what? Making us homeless? My path involves protecting myself from people who see me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited and then mocked. I stood up, and despite being 70, I still had 3 inches on her. You thought I was powerless because I live in a modest apartment. You thought I was irrelevant because I don't flaunt my money. That was your mistake. You're bluffing. You wouldn't actually take the house. Not with Emma and Tyler living there. Try me. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then she turned and walked toward the door, paused with her hand on the knob. You know what? Derek was right about you. You are bitter and alone. And this, she gestured around my apartment, this is all you have. A sad little apartment and your sad little power plays. Margaret would be ashamed of what you've become. The mention of my wife's name hit harder than anything else she'd said. But I kept my voice level. Margaret would be ashamed that I raised a son who doesn't defend his father. Now get out. She left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I sat back down at my table, my hands shaking slightly. Not from fear or doubt, but from the pure adrenaline of confrontation. The mention of Margaret had been a low blow, but it had also crystallized something for me. My wife had been a woman of principle. She'd taught Derek to stand up for what was right, to protect family, to honor his commitments. If she were here, she'd be heartbroken by what he'd become. That afternoon, Paul Morrison called. Rob, I just got a very interesting phone call from a lawyer named Jennifer Chun. She represents Derek and Vanessa. That was fast. She's threatening legal action if you attempt to call the loan or initiate foreclosure proceedings. Says you're acting in bad faith, that you're using the mortgage as a weapon in a family dispute. What did you tell her? I told her that you're exercising your rights as a note holder, and that all actions taken have been within the bounds of the mortgage agreement. I also reminded her that Derek and Vanessa entered into this arrangement voluntarily and with full knowledge of the terms. Good. Rob, she's going to make this ugly. Are you sure you want to go down this road? I thought about Vanessa's sneer as she'd called me nobody, about Derek's silence, about Emma's card on my refrigerator and the way my granddaughter had looked when her mother had dismissed it. I'm sure. Then we need to be strategic. We don't actually foreclose, not yet. That's nuclear, and it would destroy your relationship with Derek permanently. But we keep the pressure on. We remind them regularly that you hold all the power here. How? We schedule a formal review of the mortgage terms. Bring Derek in, make him sit down with both legal teams present, and go through every single clause of that agreement. Make him understand, in excruciating detail, what he signed and what you could do if you chose to. When? Next week. My office. I'll send the formal notice today. That evening, Derek called. His voice was different again, not angry this time, but defeated, exhausted. Dad, please. Can we talk about this? We're talking now. I mean in person. Just you and me. No lawyers, no Vanessa. Just ... Can we talk? I considered. All right, tomorrow. DeLuca's, noon. DeLuca's was a small Italian deli in the short north, the kind of place with red checkered tablecloths and photos of the old country on the walls. I'd been going there since the 80s. Derek and I had eaten lunch there dozens of times when he was growing up. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth, looking older than his 42 years. There were circles under his eyes. His tie was loosened. He stood when he saw me, and for a moment he looked like he might hug me. But he didn't. We shook hands awkwardly and sat down. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You're my son." Of course I came. The waitress brought menus, but neither of us looked at them. We both knew what we wanted. We'd ordered the same sandwiches here for 20 years. Dad, I'm sorry. For what Vanessa said. For not standing up to her. You were right about all of it. Okay. That's it? What do you want me to say, Derek? That I forgive you? I do. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. He ran his hands through his hair. This thing with the house, Dad, we can't afford to lose that house. We've put everything into it. If you call the loan due, we'd have to sell, probably at a loss. And with the market, then maybe you should have thought about that before you let Vanessa humiliate me. I know. I screwed up. But punishing me, punishing Vanessa, that's not going to fix anything. This isn't about punishment, son. It's about power and respect. For 42 years, I've supported you, put you through college, helped you buy your first car, sold you that house at a price no bank would have matched, with terms no bank would have given you. And what have I asked for in return? Nothing. Just basic human decency. You have it. I don't. Because if I had it, you would have told Vanessa to shut her mouth at that dinner. You would have defended me. Instead, you sat there like a coward and let her tear me apart. His face crumbled. I'm not a coward. Then prove it. Go home. Tell Vanessa exactly what I could do to you financially. Tell her that every comfort she enjoys, that house she's so proud of, exists because I allowed it. And then tell her that if she ever speaks to me that way again, or speaks about me that way again, I'll take it all back. She go nuclear. Then maybe she's not the right partner for you. Dad, I love her. Love is a choice, Derek, every day. You choose whether to love someone through their flaws or despite them. But love shouldn't require you to sacrifice your integrity. If Vanessa can't respect your father, what does that say about her respect for you? He was quiet for a long time. The waitress brought our sandwiches meatball for him, Italian cold cut for me. We ate in silence. Finally, Derek spoke. What do you want? Really? What would it take for you to back off on this mortgage thing? I set down my sandwich and looked him in the eye. I want an apology. From both of you. In person. And I want you to understand that respect isn't optional in this family. It's required. Okay, I can do that. I'll talk to Vanessa. And one more thing. I want you to start acting like a man who deserves what he's been given. Stand up for your family. All of your family, including me. Because the next time someone disrespects me and you stay silent, there won't be a conversation. There'll just be a foreclosure notice. He nodded slowly. Okay, Dad. I'll make it right. We finished our sandwiches and walked out into the October sunshine. Derek drove off in his BMW, and I watched him go, wondering if he'd actually do what he promised, or if this was just another performance. I'd know soon enough. About 3 days passed before Derek called again. When he did, His voice was tense but determined. Dad, Sunday, our house. 3 o'clock. Vanessa wants to apologize. Face to face. Can you come? Can I or will I? Will you, please? I thought about it for a moment. About whether this was genuine or just another performance. Another box to check so they could go back to their comfortable life. But Derek was my son, and despite everything, I still wanted to believe he could do the right thing. I'll be there. Sunday afternoon, I drove out to Upper Arlington. The neighborhood was pristine, as always old-growth trees turning gold and red, manicured lawns, houses that started at $500,000 and went up from there. I pulled up to 847 Tremont Road and sat in my truck for a moment, looking at the house I'd bought in 1998 as an investment property. It was beautiful. Red brick colonial, black shutters, wraparound porch. Derek and Vanessa had added a stone walkway, professional landscaping, and outdoor lighting that made it glow at night. I could see why they loved it. It was the American dream in architectural form. It was also mine. Every brick, every shutter, every perfectly trimmed hedge existed because I'd chosen to sell it to them on terms they couldn't get anywhere else. Walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Derek answered immediately, like he'd been watching for me. Dad, thanks for coming. He looked nervous, dressed in khakis and a polo shirt, his hair freshly cut. Come in. The interior was exactly what I'd expected: hardwood floors, modern furniture, family photos on every wall. There was a picture of Derek and Vanessa's wedding, Emma and Tyler's school photos, a vacation shot from Disney World. No pictures of me or Margaret. Vanessa was in the living room, standing by the fireplace. She'd dressed carefully, a modest sweater and slacks, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back. No armor today. No designer labels or attitude. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Robert, she said quietly, thank you for coming. I didn't sit down, even though Derek gestured to the sofa. I stood in the archway between the foyer and living room, keeping my distance. Derek said you wanted to talk. I wanted to apologize. She took a breath, and I could see it cost her something. Vanessa wasn't a woman accustomed to admitting fault. What I said at your birthday dinner was cruel and inappropriate. I was stressed about work, but that's no excuse. You didn't deserve to be spoken to that way, especially not in public, and especially not on your birthday. I waited, didn't speak. Let the silence stretch. I've been thinking about what you said, she continued, her voice gaining a slight edge. About respect. You're right. I should have been more respectful. We all should have. She glanced at Derek, who nodded encouragingly, like a coach from the sidelines. Go on, I said. I think sometimes I forget that you're Derek's father, that you've done a lot for us. The house, obviously, but other things too. And I let my frustration about other things color how I saw you. That wasn't fair. What other things? She blinked, caught off guard. I'm sorry? You said you let frustration about other things color your view. What other things? Vanessa exchanged a look with Derek. Just work stress, financial pressure. The kids' activities are expensive, and with my business not doing as well as your business? I interrupted. The interior design thing? Her face tightened. Yes, the market's been slow. Clients are cutting back. It's been challenging. Suddenly, pieces clicked into place. The designer clothes that seemed to disappear from her wardrobe recently. The way she'd mentioned needing to be practical at my birthday. The desperation beneath her cruelty. "You're in financial trouble," I said. "Not a question," Derek jumped in. "Dad, we're fine. It's just a rough patch." "How rough?" Silence. "How rough, Derek?" He rubbed the back of his neck, that old nervous tell from when he was a teenager caught in a lie. "We've had to dip into savings. And we took out a second mortgage last year for the renovations." "You took out a second mortgage?" I stared at him. "On this house?" It was a small equity line. 25,000. We needed to update the kitchen without telling me. "You're not on the deed." "Dad, technically, we didn't need your permission. I hold the primary mortgage." "Derek, most agreements require disclosure of additional liens. Did you even read the paperwork you signed 5 years ago?" His face went red. Vanessa stepped forward, her apologetic demeanor cracking. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. We're trying to apologize, trying to make things right. And you're interrogating us about our finances, your finances that are built on a foundation I provided." I kept my voice level, cold. "You came to me 5 years ago and said you'd found your dream home. You said you needed help. I gave you that help at below market rates with generous terms. And in return, you took out additional debt without disclosure. You insulted me publicly, and now you're offering me an apology that sounds more like a hostage video than genuine remorse. That's not fair." Vanessa started. "What's not fair is you two thinking you can disrespect me and then smooth it over with some rehearsed apology because you're scared. I'll call your loan." "Dad?" "Please," Derek said, his voice breaking slightly. "We're trying here. Are you? Because I don't hear any real accountability. I hear excuses about stress and market conditions. I hear carefully worded statements that technically apologize without actually taking responsibility." Vanessa's face flushed. "What do you want from us, Robert? You want me to grovel? You want me to get on my knees and beg forgiveness for saying some things when I was having a bad day? I want you to mean it. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't treat people like garbage just because you're having a hard time." "Oh, like you're treating us?" Her voice was rising now, the mask slipping. "You're using our mortgage as blackmail because your feelings got hurt, Vanessa." Derek's voice was sharp, warning, but she was on a roll now, all that careful contrition evaporating. "No, Derek, he needs to hear this. Yes, I was rude at dinner. Yes, I said things I shouldn't have. But this, threatening to take our house, sending lawyers after us, that's vindictive and cruel. And you know what? Maybe I was right about you being bitter." "Vanessa, stop. No. I'm done pretending. We've apologized. We've tried to make things right. But nothing's good enough for him, because this isn't about respect. It's about control. He's a lonely old man who can't stand that his son has a life that doesn't revolve around him." The room went silent. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Vanessa stood there, breathing hard, her face flushed with anger and something else, fear, maybe, or the desperate rage of someone who knows they've just made everything worse. I looked at my son. "Derek, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Do you agree with what your wife just said?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Vanessa, then back at me. "Derek," I said quietly, "last chance. Do you stand with your father or with your wife's cruelty?" He swallowed hard. "Dad, she didn't mean. Yes or no, son?" "I stand with my family," he said finally. "Vanessa's my wife. I have to support her." Something cold and final settled in my chest. "Then you've made your choice." I turned to leave. Vanessa called after me, her voice sharp with panic, now that she realized what she'd done. "Wait, Robert, wait." "I didn't mean, let's just calm down, and—" "You meant every word," I said without turning around. "Just like you meant every word at my birthday dinner. The difference is, now I'm done pretending it doesn't matter." "Dad, please," Eric started. "I'll have my attorney contact you about the mortgage review. Make sure Jennifer Chun is available. This is going to be very thorough." I walked out of that beautiful house, got in my truck, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see Derek and Vanessa standing in the doorway, arguing. Her hands were gesturing wildly. He looked defeated. I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired and sad and absolutely certain of what I needed to do next. That evening, I called Paul Morrison at home. "Paul, I want to move forward." "Rob, are you sure?" "After the meeting, I'm sure." The apology was a performance. Vanessa's still the same person she was at that dinner, just slightly better at hiding it. And Derek, my voice caught slightly. Derek chose her over me, explicitly, so yes, I'm sure. "All right. What do you want to do?" "I want to exercise my right to review their financial situation. The second mortgage they took out without disclosure, that's a material change that should have been reported. I want documentation on their current financial status, all other debts, their income, everything. And when we find out they're overextended, then I want to offer them a choice. They can refinance with a bank, good luck with that, given their debt-to-income ratio, or they can sell the house to a buyer of my choosing. You, me, at current market value, minus what they owe me, minus what they owe on the second mortgage. They'll walk away with maybe 60, 70,000. Enough to put down on something smaller, something more appropriate for people who are struggling. Rob, this is scorched earth. They fired first, Paul. I'm just returning fire." He sighed. "I'll draft the formal demand for financial disclosure tomorrow. This is going to get ugly. It's been ugly since they called me a burden at my own birthday dinner. Now it's just going to be honest." Over the next week, things moved with the cold efficiency of legal process. Paul's firm sent formal requests for documentation. Jennifer Chun responded with outrage and threats. Paul responded with the actual contract terms and case law. The back and forth was brutal and professional. All anger translated into legal language. Derek called me 4 times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that progressed from pleading to angry to resigned. Vanessa sent me a text message that simply read, "You're destroying your family over your pride." I replied, "No, you destroyed it with your disrespect. I'm just acknowledging reality." Emma called me from Derek's phone. "Grandpa? Mommy's crying a lot. Daddy says we might have to move. Are you mad at us?" My heart broke. "No, sweetheart. I'm not mad at you or Tyler. I love you both very much. This is between the adults. Mommy says you're being mean. Sometimes adults disagree about things. But it doesn't change how much I love you." She was quiet for a moment. "I still have your birthday card on my wall, and I still have yours on my refrigerator." "Okay, bye, Grandpa." After that call, I sat in my recliner for an hour, staring at Emma's card on my refrigerator door. The stick-figure grandpa with the cane, the gap-toothed smile in crayon. Paul was right. This was scorched earth, and my grandchildren were in the blast radius. But I thought about Margaret, about what she'd say if she were here. She'd been a fierce woman, my wife. Gentle when gentleness was called for, but iron-hard when principles were at stake. She wouldn't have tolerated disrespect, but she also wouldn't have sacrificed her grandchildren's stability for revenge. I picked up my phone and called Paul. "Hold on the financial disclosure demand." "What?" "Rob, we're all ready. Hold it. I need to think about something. This is unlike you. I'm 70 years old, Paul. My grandchildren are involved. I need to make sure I'm doing the right thing, not just the justified thing." I hung up and poured myself a bourbon, sat with Margaret's photo on the mantel, and asked her what she'd do. She smiled at me from the frame, beautiful and wise, and eternally 35 in that picture from our anniversary trip to Sanibel Island out. And slowly, a different plan formed. One that would teach the lesson without destroying everything. One that would require Derek and Vanessa to face reality while giving them a path forward. One that Margaret would have approved of. Next, the final move teaches the most powerful lesson, that respect can't be demanded, but consequences can be designed. Part 5/5. The final lesson, some victories aren't about winning. They're about teaching people what they stood to lose. I spent 2 days thinking before I called Paul back. 2 days reviewing documents, running numbers, and asking myself what I actually wanted from all this. Revenge? Justice? Reconciliation? The answer, I realized, wasn't simple. What I wanted was for Derek and Vanessa to understand. Really understand. Not just that they'd hurt me, but that their entire comfortable life existed on a foundation I'd built. And that foundation could be withdrawn. "Paul," I said when he answered, "I want to restructure the mortgage." "Restructure how?" "Call it due, but offer them a way out. Here's what I'm thinking." We spent an hour on the phone, working through the details. Paul pushed back twice, said I was being too generous, but I held firm. This wasn't about destroying them. It was about teaching a lesson they'd remember for the rest of their lives. 3 days later, Derek and Vanessa received a formal letter from Morrison and Associates. I wasn't there when they opened it, but Derek called me within an hour, his voice shaking. "Dad, we got the letter." "Is this? Are you serious?" "Completely serious. You and Vanessa need to come to Paul's office tomorrow at 2 p.m., both of you. Jennifer Chun can be there if you want, but this isn't a negotiation. But the terms, Dad, we can't. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Don't be late." I hung up before he could argue. The next afternoon, I arrived at Paul's office 15 minutes early. Paul had set up the conference room, the big one with the mahogany table and the view of the river. All the documents were laid out in neat folders, color-coded by topic. Financial records, mortgage agreements, property valuations. Correspondence. Derek and Vanessa arrived exactly on time, Jennifer Chon with them. The attorney was mid-40s, sharp-dressed, with the aggressive energy of someone billing $400 an hour. Vanessa looked like she hadn't slept. Derek looked worse. We all sat down. Paul at the head of the table. Me to his right. Derek, Vanessa, and Jennifer on the other side. Thank you all for coming, Paul began, his voice professionally neutral. We're here to discuss the mortgage on 847 Tremont Road and certain contractual obligations that have come to our attention. Jennifer spoke up immediately. My clients dispute any claim that they violated the mortgage terms. Your clients took out a second mortgage without disclosure, Paul interrupted smoothly. That's a clear violation of Section 7.3 of the agreement, which requires notification of any additional liens or encumbrances. That violation, combined with recent financial pressures we've documented, constitutes material change in circumstances, which means Mr. Turner has the legal right to call the loan due immediately. Vanessa's face went white. You can't. We can, I said quietly. And we have. The loan is now due in full. $378,416, plus the $25,000 on your equity line. You have 30 days to pay, or we initiate foreclosure. That's insane. Vanessa's voice was rising. We can't come up with $400,000 in 30 days. Which brings us to the offer, Paul said, sliding 3 folders across the table. Mr. Turner is prepared to offer you 2 options. Derek opened his folder with trembling hands. Read silently. His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, something like hope. Option 1, Paul continued. You refinance the mortgage through a traditional lender. Given your current debt-to-income ratio and the second mortgage, you'll likely get a rate around 7.5%. Your monthly payment will increase by approximately $1,800. If you can make that work, Mr. Turner will sign off on the refinance and you'll owe him nothing further. We can't afford an extra $1,800 a month, Derek said quietly. Which brings us to option 2, I said. I'll forgive the loan entirely. The house becomes yours, free and clear. No mortgage payment at all. The room went silent. Vanessa stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What's the catch? The catch, I said, pulling out a separate document, is that you'll sign this agreement. It's very simple. 3 conditions. I slid it across the table. Derek picked it up and read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. 1. Derek and Vanessa Turner agree to attend family therapy with Robert Turner for a minimum of 6 months, meeting bi-weekly at a therapist of mutual agreement. 2. Derek and Vanessa Turner will write a formal, detailed apology to Robert Turner, acknowledging the specific harm caused and the privileges they took for granted, to be read aloud in the presence of the same witnesses who attended the October 18th birthday dinner. 3. Derek and Vanessa Turner agree that Emma and Tyler Turner will spend 1 weekend per month with their grandfather, Robert Turner, including overnight stays, for a minimum of 2 years. Derek looked up at me, his eyes wet. Dad, ... Those are my terms, I said. You get a house worth $560,000, free and clear. But you earn it. You do the work to fix this family. You acknowledge what you've taken for granted. And you give me real time with my grandchildren, not just awkward holiday dinners where everyone pretends everything's fine. And if we refuse? Vanessa's voice was small now, defeated. Then you have 30 days to come up with $400,000, or you lose the house. I'll buy it myself at auction, probably for less than market value given the second mortgage complications. You'll walk away with whatever equity remains after both loans are settled, maybe 40, 50,000. And you'll never speak to me again, which seems to be what you wanted anyway. Jennifer Chun was reading the agreement carefully, her pen tapping against the table. This is highly unusual. It's also entirely legal, Paul said. Mr. Turner is under no obligation to maintain the loan, and he's offering them an extraordinarily generous alternative. They can accept it or refuse it. Derek and Vanessa looked at each other. A whole conversation seemed to pass between them in that glance. Then Derek turned to me. "The therapy," he said. "Why?" "Because you need to understand why what happened hurt me. And I need to understand how I raised a son who thought it was okay to stay silent when his wife tore me apart. We need a mediator, someone neutral, to help us figure out if this relationship can be salvaged, or if we're just going through the motions for the grandchildren's sake." "And the apology?" "Because Vanessa humiliated me in public. That requires a public acknowledgement, not for revenge, for accountability. The same people who watched her call me a worthless burden need to hear her take responsibility for it." Vanessa spoke up, her voice cracking. "And if we do all this, if we jump through every hoop, what then? Do we get to live in fear forever that you'll change your mind? No. If you complete the conditions, I'll transfer the deed to you completely. No strings. No leverage. The house will be yours, and I'll have no legal claim to it whatsoever. This ends when you fulfill the agreement. But you'll have your pound of flesh first," she said bitterly. "I'll have a family that knows how to treat each other with respect," I corrected. "Or I'll have confirmation that this family is beyond repair. Either way, we'll all know where we stand." Jennifer leaned over and whispered to Derek and Vanessa for several minutes. I couldn't hear what she said, but I could see Derek nodding, Vanessa shaking her head, then finally slumping in resignation. Derek looked at me. "Can we have 24 hours to think about it?" "You have 30 days to pay the loan," I said. "But every day you wait is a day closer to foreclosure. I'd suggest you decide quickly." They left without another word, Jennifer Chun trailing behind them with her briefcase and her expensive perfume. When the door closed, Paul let out a long breath. That was brutal. It needed to be. You know there's a chance they'll refuse. Pride makes people do stupid things. Then they'll learn an expensive lesson about the cost of pride. And if they accept? I thought about Emma's card on my refrigerator. About Tyler's laugh when I used to push him on the swings at Goodale Park, before Vanessa started making excuses for why the kids couldn't visit. About the family dinners Margaret used to host when Derek was young and respectful, and we all knew how to be kind to each other. Then maybe we salvaged something worth saving, I said. Derek called me that night. 10 p.m. I was in my recliner reading a biography of Harry Truman. "Dad, we'll do it." I closed the book. All of it? The therapy, the apology, the grandchildren visits? All of it. His voice was thick with emotion. "Vanessa's not happy, but she understands. We can't lose the house, and maybe you're right. Maybe we need help. Maybe you do. The apology, does it have to be at Romano's? In front of everyone? Yes, same people, same place. Public harm requires public accountability." He was quiet for a moment. "Okay, we'll arrange it." "Good. Paul will send you the paperwork tomorrow. Sign it Get it notarized, return it within 72 hours. Then we start therapy. Dad?" His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let her say those things. I'm sorry. I wasn't the man you raised me to be. I know you are, son. Now prove it." 3 weeks later, we gathered at Romano's. Same table, same group bill, and Linda, a couple of my other old friends who'd witnessed the birthday disaster. Derek, Vanessa, me, and Paul Morrison as a witness. Emma and Tyler were with Vanessa's sister for the evening. This wasn't for children. The owner, Giuseppe, an old friend, had closed the restaurant to the public for the hour. Just our group, the smell of garlic and tomatoes, the soft Italian music playing in the background. Vanessa stood up, a piece of paper trembling in her hands. Derek sat beside her, his hand on her back for support. She dressed simply slacks and a blouse, no jewelry, no armor. Her face was bare of makeup, which made her look younger and more vulnerable. She cleared her throat, began to read. On October 18th, at Robert Turner's 70th birthday dinner, I said things that were cruel, disrespectful, and completely unacceptable. I called Robert a burden. I suggested he was senile and irrelevant. I mocked his age, his living situation, and his worth as a human being. I did this in front of his friends and his grandchildren, on what should have been a day of celebration. I said these things because I was stressed about my business, worried about money, and taking out my frustrations on someone I viewed as powerless. I was wrong about all of it. Robert isn't powerless. He's a man who built a successful business, served his country, raised a good son, and has spent his life living according to principles. I clearly don't understand. The house Derek and I live in the house. I was so proud it exists because Robert sold it to us at below market rates with generous terms. The life I've enjoyed for 5 years was subsidized by a man I treated with contempt. I took his kindness for granted and repaid it with cruelty. I'm sorry, Robert. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I'm sorry for the disrespect. I'm sorry for teaching my children, through my example, that it's acceptable to mock and demean people we think can't fight back. I was wrong, and I'm ashamed of what I did. She sat down, tears streaming down her face. The paper was still shaking in her hands. Derek stood up. He hadn't written anything down, but his voice was steady. Dad, I failed you. You raised me to stand up for what's right, to protect family, to be a man of honor. When Vanessa said those things, I should have stopped her immediately. I should have defended you. Instead, I stayed silent because it was easier than confronting my wife. Because I was a coward. You've given me everything a good upbringing, an education, opportunities, financial help I never properly appreciated. And when you needed me to simply speak up on your behalf, I couldn't even do that. I'm sorry, Dad, not just for that night, but for every time I've chosen comfort character. You deserve better from me. You deserve better from all of us. He sat down. The table was silent, except for the quiet Italian music and Vanessa's muffled crying. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 70 years. Thank you both for that. I know it wasn't easy. Public apologies never are. I looked around the table at my friends, who'd supported me through Margaret's death, through building my business, through everything. What happened 3 weeks ago hurt. But what happened tonight takes courage. Real courage, not the easy kind. Derek, Vanessa, we start therapy next Tuesday. 6 months minimum. We're going to figure out if this family can function in a healthy way. And every month, I get my grandchildren for a weekend. We're going to build real relationships, not just obligation visits. This isn't forgiveness yet. Forgiveness is earned, not given. But it's a start. Bill raised his wine glass. To starts, then. And to families who do the hard work. We all drank. Even Vanessa managed a small sip through her tears. The therapy was hard. Dr. Patricia Reeves, a family counselor Bill had recommended, didn't let anyone hide. She made Derek confront his conflict avoidance. Made Vanessa examine her need for control and status. Made me look at whether I'd been too absent after Margaret died, too focused on giving Derek space and independence when what he needed was continued guidance. We fought in those sessions. Vanessa cried more than once. Derek got angry. I walked out twice when the frustration got too much, but slowly, painfully, things shifted. Vanessa started talking about her father, who'd been emotionally withholding and measured love by material success, about how she'd learned to equate worth with wealth and status, about her fear that if she didn't maintain a perfect image, she'd be revealed as the struggling small-town girl she'd always been underneath. Derek talked about watching me grieve Margaret, about feeling helpless, about throwing himself into work and marriage because he didn't know how to help his father through loss, about defaulting to Vanessa's judgment because making her happy seemed easier than making hard choices. I talked about loneliness, about feeling invisible after Margaret died, about Derek pulling away and me not knowing how to bridge the gap, about my anger that the son I'd sacrificed for couldn't spare me basic respect. By month 3, we were having actual conversations. By month 5, Derek hugged me at the end of a session, really hugged me. Not the awkward side pat we'd defaulted to for years. The weekends with Emma and Tyler were pure joy. I taught them to fish at Hoover Reservoir, took them to the Science Museum, let them help me build a birdhouse in the apartment building's workshop. Emma still has my birthday card on her wall. Now I have a dozen more of her drawings on my refrigerator. 6 months to the day after that meeting at Romano's, Paul Morrison transferred the deed to 847 Tremont Road into Derek and Vanessa's names. Free and clear. No mortgage. No strings. The house was theirs. That evening, they invited me to dinner. Not at a restaurant, at their home. Vanessa cooked, actually cooked, a pot roast with potatoes and carrots that reminded me of something Margaret used to make after dinner, while the kids were upstairs playing video games. Vanessa brought out a small box. This was my grandmother's, she said, handing it to me. She raised me after my parents divorced, taught me about dignity and grace, lessons I clearly forgot somewhere along the way. She died 5 years ago, and I've kept this with her things. She paused. I'd like you to have it. I opened the box. Inside was a small brass compass, old and worn, with an inscription on the back. True north is always true. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman, I said. She was. She would have liked you. Vanessa's eyes were wet, and she would have been ashamed of how I treated you. Then let's make sure she'd be proud of how we move forward. We sat on their back deck as the sun set over Upper Arlington, drinking coffee, talking about Emma's soccer season and Tyler's school play, and whether the Buckeyes had a shot at the championship. Normal family conversation. The kind I'd been missing for years. As I drove home that night, past the big houses and perfect lawns, I thought about power and pride and what we owe each other. I thought about Margaret and what she'd think of how this all turned out. I think she'd say, I did it right. Not perfectly. There's no perfect way through family pain. But I taught the lesson that needed teaching without destroying what could be saved. The house on Tremont Road stands as a reminder to Derek and Vanessa that respect matters, that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the quietest power is the most profound. And every Sunday now, I have dinner with my family. Real dinner with real conversation, and the knowledge that we all understand what we almost lost. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's transformation. Author's note: this story explores the painful reality that family love doesn't excuse disrespect, and that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is hold people accountable for their behavior. Robert's power came not from cruelty, but from clarity. He understood his worth and refused to accept less than basic human dignity. The resolution wasn't about making Derek and Vanessa suffer, but about making them understand what they'd taken for granted and giving them a path to do better. Real justice in families isn't about winning. It's about creating the conditions where everyone can learn, grow, and rebuild on a foundation of mutual respect. Sometimes the strongest statement we can make is, "This is what you stood to lose. Now show me you understand why it matters."